The film opens in 1968 with David Noodles Aronson, now a middle-aged man, returning to New York City's Lower East Side after many years away. He has been living under the alias Robert Williams and receives an unexpected letter from a rabbi informing him that an old neighborhood cemetery is being closed and the graves relocated. Suspicious of the message, Noodles believes it may be connected to his former associates, Patsy Goldberg, Cockeye Stein, and Max Berkovich, members of the gang with whom he spent his youth. Convinced someone may be seeking retribution, he begins investigating while staying in a room above a bar owned by his longtime friend Fat Mo Gelli. The story then shifts back to 1920, when Noodles and his childhood friends grow up in the impoverished Jewish district of Manhattan's Lower East Side. The boys perform small jobs for a young Irish gangster named Bugsy but secretly hope to establish their own criminal enterprise. During an attempt to rob a drunk man, they encounter Max, a clever newcomer who outsmarts them and keeps the victim's pocket watch for himself. Although their first meeting is hostile, Noodles and Max quickly develop a mutual respect and become close friends. Eventually sharing leadership of the gang, the boys are constantly harassed by a corrupt policeman known as Whitey. After discovering him secretly visiting their young friend Peggy, who works as a prostitute, they photograph him and use the evidence to blackmail him. This forces Whitey to pay them protection money, return the stolen watch, and even perform favors for their gang. Meanwhile, Noodles becomes infatuated with Deborah, the intelligent and ambitious sister of Fat Mo. He often secretly watches her practice ballet in her father's restaurant and dreams of winning her affection. Despite occasional moments of closeness, Deborah generally keeps her distance from him. As time passes, the boys become increasingly successful through petty theft and other small crimes. Their growing influence eventually attracts Bugsy's attention. Angry that they are operating independently, Bugsy and his men brutally assault Noodles and Max and confiscate their earnings, warning them that they must either work for him or not work at all. Determined to succeed on their own terms, the boys approach local mobster Al Capuano with an innovative smuggling method developed by Noodles. The plan allows valuable cargo thrown overboard during customs inspections to be recovered later. The operation proves highly profitable, and the gang receives a percentage of the earnings, quickly accumulating wealth. They store their money in a train station locker, agreeing that all members must be present whenever the funds are accessed. Their success, however, comes at a terrible cost. While returning from one of their operations, they are ambushed by Bugsy, who attacks them with a handgun. Young Dominic is shot and dies in Noodles' arms. Overcome with grief and rage, Noodles chases Bugsy down and repeatedly stabs him to death. When two policemen intervene, Noodles accidentally kills one of them as well. He is arrested and sentenced to 12 years in a juvenile prison, while his devastated friends watch him being taken away. The narrative then moves to 1932, when Noodles is finally released. Max greets him upon his return and reveals that the gang has become highly successful during his absence. Operating under the cover of a funeral business, they have built a thriving bootlegging empire during Prohibition and now control one of the city's most popular speakeasies. To celebrate Noodles' freedom, a party is organized where he meets new associates, Frankie Manoldi and Joe. The pair recruit the gang for a diamond robbery in Detroit. During the heist, Noodles becomes involved with Carol, the broker's secretary, who provocatively encourages him despite warnings from Joe. Afterward, the gang delivers the stolen diamonds to Joe, only for Joe and his men to be murdered as part of a secret arrangement Max made with Frankie. Noodles is furious when he learns of the betrayal. He believes the gang should remain independent rather than becoming entangled with powerful criminals like Frankie. He also fears that such alliances could eventually force friends to turn against one another. Max dismisses his concerns and insists that would never happen. As they leave the scene, Noodles recklessly drives their car off a pier into the water. The others escape safely, while Noodles disappears beneath the surface. For a tense moment, his friends fear he is drowned, but he eventually resurfaces unharmed, echoing a similar prank Max once played on him years earlier. In 1933, the gang becomes involved with labor activist Jimmy Clean Hands O'Donnell, a respected union organizer known for challenging corrupt union bosses, especially a powerful figure named Crowning. After saving Jimmy from being murdered by Crowning's enforcer, Chicken Joe, who intends to burn him alive, the gang offers their support. Jimmy declines at first, unwilling to associate himself with criminals involved in bootlegging, narcotics, and prostitution. The gang later intervenes in a labor dispute connected to police captain Vincent Aiello, a well-known public figure who has been manipulated by factory owners into using his officers to protect strikebreakers. To force Aiello's cooperation, the gang devises an elaborate scheme at a hospital, secretly swapping his newborn son with a baby girl. When Aiello discovers the switch, Noodles contacts him and demands that he withdraw police protection from the strike. However, the gang soon realizes they have misplaced the record identifying the children involved. Unconcerned by the mistake, they decide to return a randomly selected boy to Aiello, joking callously about the confusion they have created among several families. Meanwhile, Noodles rekindles his relationship with Deborah. He arranges an extravagant getaway for the two of them at a luxurious resort in the Hamptons during the off-season. During their stay, Noodles confesses that his love for her helped him endure his years in prison. Deborah, however, remains emotionally distant and reveals that she plans to move to California to pursue a career in acting. On their journey back to New York, Noodles violently forces himself on her in the back of a limousine. Filled with shame afterward, he sends her home. Later, while drinking heavily, he meets a young prostitute named Eve, who becomes his companion. During their first night together, Noodles repeatedly calls her by Deborah's name.
The following day, Deborah departs for California by train. Noodles arrives at the station too late to stop her and watches helplessly as she closes the curtain of her compartment and leaves him behind. After disappearing for several weeks, Noodles is eventually found in Chinatown by Cockeye, spending his days smoking opium and mourning Deborah's departure. Once he returns to the gang's headquarters, Max informs him that the labor union has rewarded them generously and has effectively made Max the group's leader. Soon afterward, Jimmy narrowly survives an assassination attempt when Chicken Joe opens fire on him from a passing car. The gang retaliates by attacking Crowning outside his nightclub, killing several of his men, including Chicken Joe. Although Crowning escapes unharmed, he is left deeply shaken. Jimmy survives but suffers a permanent injury that leaves him disabled. During a hospital celebration of his recovery, Jimmy's lawyer, Sharky, advises the gang to consider entering legitimate business since Prohibition is nearing its end. He suggests using their extensive transportation network for legal ventures with Jimmy acting as their public representative. Max is intrigued by the proposal, but Noodles remains skeptical, preferring the independence of their traditional criminal operations. Max argues that their ambitions must evolve, while Noodles stubbornly clings to his old principles. As the repeal of Prohibition approaches, the gang faces an uncertain future. During a vacation in Florida with their girlfriends, Eve and Carol, Max reveals an ambitious plan to rob the Federal Reserve Bank in Manhattan. Noodles immediately dismisses the idea as reckless and suicidal. Carol, now working in a brothel connected to the gang and romantically involved with Max, privately urges Noodles to stop him before disaster strikes. Determined to prevent the robbery, Noodles anonymously contacts the police and informs them about an upcoming liquor transaction involving Max, Patsy, and Cockeye. He hopes that a brief arrest near the end of Prohibition will force them to abandon the dangerous scheme. Later, he again tries to persuade Max to reconsider. Instead, Max accuses him of becoming weak and cowardly. When Noodles calls both the plan and Max himself crazy, Max reacts violently and savagely beats him. It is later revealed that Max is deeply sensitive about the subject because his father suffered from mental illness and died in a sanatorium during Max's childhood. On a cold, rainy night, Noodles arrives at the location of the liquor exchange and discovers a massacre. Patsy and Cockeye have been killed, and Max appears to have died after being horribly burned. Devastated, Noodles retreats to Chinatown, seeking refuge in an opium den and trying to lose himself in drugs and despair. Not long afterward, several gangsters begin hunting him down. They murder Eve when she refuses to reveal his whereabouts and brutally torture Fat Mo in an effort to locate him. The attackers reveal that they know Noodles informed the police, a fact he cannot understand since he never confessed it to anyone. Warned of the gunman's arrival at the opium den, Noodles escapes and returns to Fat Mo's place, where he kills one of the men guarding his friend. After learning of Eve's death and the widespread manhunt against him, Noodles retrieves the key to a train station locker that once held the gang's fortune. When he opens it, he discovers that the money has vanished and has been replaced with stacks of newspapers. Confused and betrayed, he buys a one-way ticket to Buffalo and disappears. Years later, in 1968, while investigating the mysteries of the past, Noodles discovers that his former partners have been reburied in a grand mausoleum. When he enters the monument, an automated device begins playing the same haunting pan-flute melody that Cockeye used to perform. Inside, Noodles finds a plaque dedicated to his friends and, to his astonishment, discovers the very key to the train station locker mounted upon it, along with an inscription claiming that he himself placed it there in their memory. While visiting the cemetery, Noodles unexpectedly meets the mausoleum's manager. Introducing himself as Robert Williams, he inquires about the extent of Mr. Aronson's involvement in the monument's creation and whether she ever dealt with him directly. She explains that Aronson's only contributions were suggesting the inscription above the bronze entrance, "Your youngest and strongest will fall by the sword," and supplying a recording of Cockey's song. Beyond that, he allowed the architects complete freedom in designing the mausoleum, and all financial arrangements were handled through an overseas bank account. Later, Noodles opens the train station locker and discovers the same leather suitcase he had left years earlier, now containing over $1 million. Inside is a note that reads, "Advance payment for your next job." Convinced there is a connection between Bailey and the money he received, Noodles begins investigating further. Before accepting an invitation to Bailey's mansion, he visits an elderly Carol, now residing in a retirement home operated by the Bailey Foundation. She informs him that Deborah has returned to New York and achieved fame as a celebrated actress. Noodles meets her backstage. Their reunion is marked by a long and emotional conversation. Noodles remarks that Deborah was perfectly cast as Cleopatra because, unlike nearly everyone else from his past, time seems to have left her untouched. Deborah then reveals that she is involved with Secretary Bailey and that they have an adult son named David, whose appearance strongly resembles a young Max. That evening, Bailey hosts an extravagant gathering attended by many of New York's political and social elites. In private, Bailey, who is actually Max, meets with Jimmy. Since then, he has lived under the identity of Christopher Bailey. Facing inevitable exposure and possible murder, Max confesses that he wants only Noodles to kill him. He believes Noodles deserves revenge because Max betrayed him, stole the gang's fortune, and took Deborah away from him. Noodles refuses. He continues to address Max as Secretary Bailey or Mr. Bailey, refusing to acknowledge him as the friend he once knew. Noodles explains that the betrayal and guilt he has carried for 35 years are punishment enough. Rejecting Max's request, he leaves through a hidden passage connected to the office. Outside the estate, Noodles catches sight of Max standing near the road. A garbage truck, which he had noticed earlier while surveying the property, passes by with its crushing machinery visible at the rear.